Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the fifth and final session of PEM Reads Moby-Dick. I'm Danielle Olson, and I'm honored to be with you tonight in lieu of David Snyder. Whether you've been here since chapter one or jumped aboard somewhere in the middle, we're so glad to have you here tonight. Huge thanks to my fellow panelists, the ever insightful Dan Lipkin, the Anne C. Pingree Director of the Phillips Library, and the Curator of Draw Me Ishmael. And a special shout out to Lillian and Sarah behind the scenes who are working to help make this event run so smoothly. So as we wrap up the series tonight, we're connecting our reading of Moby-Dick with PEM's special exhibition, Draw Me Ishmael. And here's what we're in for this evening. Fantastic. So Dan will share reflections on the novel and exhibition. We'll head into small breakout groups for conversations, and then we'll return for a final large group discussion and a farewell. And some helpful reminders. We want to share with you that spoilers are welcome. So you made it to the end. Nothing is off limits at this point. Keep an eye out for the polls during the session. So just a bit of fun to wrap things up and see how you're feeling. And let's keep in mind our shared agreements for our conversation. So respect for all ideas and voices, good judgment in how we speak and listen, openness and curiosity, bringing your questions and wonderings, and humility. No one has all the answers, and that is okay. So when we go out into the breakout rooms, we'll suggest some discussion prompts, but please follow the threads that excite you the most. And for now, I'm going to pass it over to Dan for some reflections on the exhibition.
Great. Thanks so much, Danielle. Good to be with you, everybody. We have made it. We've made it to the end. And I'm really, really excited to talk to you a little bit about the exhibition Draw Me Ishmael and how it connects to this last component, this last section of the novel. And so I'll start here with a reference to Moby Dick's shortest chapter, chapter 122, called Midnight Aloft. And this is artist Madeline Boshen's take on this chapter. And she refers to maritime signal flags in this little zine. It's from a series called Moby-Dick Fillet, published in Vienna, Austria. And the publishers are working with contemporary artists to illustrate each chapter of Moby-Dick. So they'll work with a different artist for each chapter. They worked with Madeline for chapter 122. And they're publishing the series out of order. So we are subscribers, and I think they're about they've done about 50 of the 135 plus chapters. So we're looking forward to having a complete edition of Moby Dick with each chapter illustrated by a different contemporary artist at the end of the project. And just for your information, if you're not familiar with maritime signal flags, the stripes, this particular flag, the stripes of red, blue, and white here represent the letter C, or the message yes. In his 1990 comic book, Bill Sienkiewicz, he really layers detailed images. He creates a really moody setting, and he evokes the dangers and the psychological drama of the novel, right? A lot of that has come to the fore in this last 100 pages that we've just read. The psychology, the obsession, kind of the darkness of it. And I'll show several pages from this particular work as I talk here, and they are all viewable on the in-gallery digital interactive. If you've been there, you can flip through the pages digitally, so you can see more than just the page spread that's on view. And in this one, you may notice the quadrant on the left page in the upper right there, the one that Ahab destroys by throwing it to the deck. References to the typhoon, to the lightning, to St. Elmo's fire. Ahab on the upper right there, refusing to trim sails and forging ahead through the storm. And on the lower right, the gun, an illustration of the gun that Starbuck considers but ultimately declines to shoot Ahab with. This is a page spread, the one that's currently on view from the Alex Katz illustrated edition from 2020. Um, his illustration of the, the second to last chapter of the novel, the chase second day. And it's kind of this overhead view of the hunt here. You really get a sense of the chaos of the whale hunt and the sprawling, the men in the water, the boats all in pieces. And it's really, really effective, I think. This one from 1976 is the Marvel Classics comic edition. Alex Nino was the illustrator for this edition, and these pages are from chapters 134 and 135, the second and the third days of the chase. And I really love, in particular, the coloring here of these pages, the purple sky, the kind of like light lime colored water surrounding Moby-Dick on the left-hand page. And Nino does a really great job of depicting that white scar that crosses Ahab's face that Melville so kind of evocatively describes earlier on in the novel. One of the only illustrators that actually does focus on that particular scar. So we're back to this one. We're back to Bill Sienkiewicz, again from the chase. Just I love the motion of this particular page spread with Moby Dick coming up out of the water and the men and the timbers of the boat and the lances going everywhere. You really get a sense of the energy of that encounter. And these two items are on the book covers wall. And I actually didn't really think of this when we were putting the book covers wall together, but as I was reviewing images for talking to you about them, I realized that these two depict the moment that Fidela appears lashed to Moby Dick. He's dead. His eyes are bugging out there, and he's now fulfilled one part of the prophecy that Fidela would precede Ahab into the afterlife in death. On the left, an illustrated and abridged edition, American edition, published in 2006, and on the right, this was published in France in 1976. Coming back to Bill Sienkiewicz here, I love this page spread. I love it, love it. You really get a sense of the intensity of Ahab's rage and hatred as he is, lancing this harpoon. You get the splattering blood. You get a sense of the motion and the chaos of that from Sienkiewicz's illustrations. That look of deep anger and hatred on Ahab's face, that grimace that he has, is really, really compelling, I think. And of course, on view in the first section of the exhibition, when we talk a little bit about Melville's inspirations, are these two items related to the final scene. On the left, Owen Chase's account of the sinking of the Essex. This is from 1821, a quite rare book, published just a year after the tragedy of 1820. And on this particular page, which is on view right now, is the supplement that Chase put together, listing the crew members and what their fates were after the tragedy. And on the right, Thomas Nickerson is drawing from about 1870, about 50 years after the sinking of the Essex, of the moment the whale rams the Essex and sinks it. Nickerson was a cabin boy on the Essex. He was 14 years old, and you can see if you look on the deck there, just below the mainmast, you can see the crew readying one of the whale boats to lower into the water to try to get to safety. On view now in the gallery is a reproduction. The original went back to the Nantucket Historical Association in the fall, and we were totally delighted to have the real thing on view for a little bit. This page spread is from Huckleberry Dick, which is a collage of the Huckleberry Finn and Moby Dick Classics illustrated comic books that sold hundreds of thousands of copies. I love this particular page spread because of the really vibrant colors. And this is another item that you can see in full in our digital interactive. What I think is really interesting about the illustration on the right-hand page here is that, in the foreground, you've got this whaleboat with 6 men watching from quite far away, Moby-Dick ramming the Pequod. This to me feels like a survivable distance, right? Like based on the sequence of the closing scene, I would have expected this particular whaleboat with these men to have already been wrecked and its men probably drowned because, as we know, only one person survives the wreck of the Pequod. So this particular image gives me a little bit of pause here and makes me wonder about the illustrator of the Classics Illustrated edition and whether or not they really paid close attention to that very, very final scene. And speaking of the final scene, of course, um, a few of the final scenes on view in the exhibition. This closing spread from Sam Ida's pop-up book. Again, at the moment where Moby Dick rams the Pequod, you can see the rigging all askew and the splashing water. And if you can see on the right-hand side of that, you can see the whirlpool. That's a little interactive dial that you can turn back and forth to kind of make the whirlpool rotate, which is very, very cool. I love Garrick Palmer's work from 1974, where he illustrates the novel with wood engravings, and this is his full page spread engraving of that whirlpool. You can see the whirlpool in the center, the sinking Pequod in the distance in the back left, and just a hint of a spout in the distance on the right hand side, hinting at the presence and the departure of Moby Dick to deeper waters. Um, there's this closing page of Emma Tomlin Marca's pop-up book. Um, she was a student at Scripps College in the book arts program one summer and created this pop-up book as a student project. We're delighted to have student work in the exhibition. And if you look closely, it's kind of hard to see in the photography. This actually is a really difficult book to photograph, but you can see that hand kind of reaching up out of the water just to the right of center there on the bottom as this person kind of sinks to the bottom of the sea. And a couple of closing interpretations here. Um, Actually, this is the kind of the penultimate scene in the Sienkiewicz comic book. This page spread is really subtle, right? It's really dark. It feels very quiet to me and kind of murky. You know, you've got this whale's tail that's clearly diving deep after having destroyed the boat and all the crew of the Pequod. It's something. It's oddly very calming for me after the chaos of that final scene and a really beautiful image. And again, a couple of closing interpretations here. On the right, Bill Sienkiewicz's final scene, where we see Ishmael laying on that coffin um, that is now the life buoy, was once Queequeg's coffin, with the sunset in the background and probably the Rachel approaching from the background. And on the left, the Barry Moser wood engraving from the Arion Press edition in 1979, that ending sequence with his wood engraving of that great shroud of the sea facing the passage of the epilogue at the very end, where Ishmael describes how he survived the wreck. So that's kind of where we are with how the exhibition connects to this last section. I think, as you may have guessed, a lot of this last section deals with the narrative elements, the main story of the crew and what happens to them, and it's their encounter with Moby Dick. And so these um, really compelling and these scenes that are full of action, I think, are really inspirational to artists, and I think you see that in a lot of these books feature these kinds of episodes as illustrations, right? They are taking the narrative elements and building imagery with Melville's words in a really great way. And there is lots of time to see the exhibition if you haven't yet, or if you saw it um, once between its opening last June and March. It'll be on view until the end of March 2026. So there's lots of time to check it out and come enjoy what we've got on offer. And I think that's what I have to say. Yeah.
Thank you, Dan. That was a really wonderful walkthrough of the exhibition. And so let's move to the discussion. So as we break out into our breakout rooms, here are three starting points for conversation. The first, obsession. So how does Ahab's obsession grow and intensify? Fate, how do prophecies and visions from earlier in the novel manifest themselves or don't in the final chapters? The human condition. How does Melville explore what it means to be human, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and socially? And again, please also keep in mind our shared agreements: respect, good judgment, open and curiosity, and humility. So Lil and Sarah will now open up our breakout rooms, and Dan and I may drop in and visit. So please enjoy the discussion and hold on tight while we do that in the background.
All right.
We're back. Okay. Thank you all for your thoughtful engagement. All right. We're gonna come back, and now is the time. We'd love to hear from you all. So if you are able to click the raise hand button under the reactions tab, if you have something you'd like to share with the bigger group, and I'm able to call on you. So things you might want to share, maybe what emerged in your breakout rooms. Did anything new come to light as you talked through it? Any final reflections are welcome as well. So please, if you have something you'd like to share with the whole cohort, now is the time.
Otherwise, I could just ramble for 20 minutes and nobody wants that. So um, maybe I'll just offer that this came up in one of the breakout rooms I was in. I did mention it in another one I popped into, and that was the realization that Melville wrote the whole thing out in longhand and had family members copying it, and you know, all of the manual labor that had to go into that. It was um, pretty astonishing. It's a long novel. But I'll stop now because other folks have raised their hands. So
Fantastic. All right, well, Susan, it looks like you were the first to get your hand up, so I'm gonna unmute you.
Might
It's telling me that I'm asking you to unmute is my option, so hopefully you're getting that request.
hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
So first of all, thanks for the exhibition. Thanks for this marathon. It's been wonderful. I hope I see some people at the Mystic Seaport Moby-Dick reading marathon this summer, the New Bedford marathon. That would be great. It's lovely to be able to read the book out loud. So one thing we talked about, I think is interesting. So, you know, you're talking about Ahab's obsession. So he was obsessed with Moby Dick and it led to disaster. But also Ishmael is obsessed with Moby Dick. So when the book ends, you know, and the whole ship goes down, Ishmael goes on. And at that point in the book, you can look back. So Ishmael, you know, he didn't become depressed or, you know, severely, you know, just didn't recover from this. In fact, he becomes obsessed with the whales, but in a positive way. He's studying them. He's traveling around the world. He's like tattooing his arm with the measurements of whales. He's telling us about whales. He loves to talk to people about whales, you know, and he's written this wonderful book for us. So I think even though in the end the Pequod goes down, but the Ishmael comes up, and so I think you can look at two different types of obsession. So you don't want to be like Ahab, where your obsession leads to disaster, but you can be obsessed and be creative and have it be a good thing as well.
yeah, that's a great point. Don't drag everybody down with you and your obsession, right? It's
Please
give the world something beautiful and meaningful to
exactly.
take forward and continue to enjoy.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. And Jean, I'm gonna have you unmute and go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. That I was interested in the comment that Susan just made because he made it in the breakout group that I was in. And it's a bigger question really is Ishmael the narrator of the book? I felt like Ishmael sort of was very hidden in this book. And of course, it's my first time reading, so I probably missed a lot. But I didn't get much of a sense of Ishmael at all. Like he was just sort of in the wallpaper. And a lot of the chapters about whales and all that were really Melville talking and not so much Ishmael. And I was wondering, did I just miss a lot? Should I go back, read the Ishmael chapters, or um, how other people felt about that or thought about it?
The whole I mean, even the first line is kind of mysterious, right? Like, call me Ishmael. Well, because that's your name, or because that's what you want us to call you, or like, what's your role here? You know, I mean, in a way, the whole novel starts out with this mystery, right? This
It's like, okay, he's supposed to be the narrator, but pretty soon he doesn't really seem like the narrator doesn't seem like he's Ishmael at all. Um, I thought that was perhaps one of the modernistic parts of Melville that everyone later on is so happy about. That also is why no one liked the book when it first came out.
Thank you, Jean. Appreciate that. I'm gonna have Karen go ahead and unmute. Hopefully you're receiving the request on your end. Great.
Well, also I want to comment on what Susan said earlier about Ishmael. I like that. The peacock goes down and Ishmael rises up. Um, I thought one of the best lines of the whole book was the opening, that dark or a cold November of my soul. When I feel that his depression, he wants to go to the sea. And so I when I didn't, this didn't occur to me, I guess until now, or just till just a few minutes ago, that I mentioned how Ishmael, by relinquishing control and fully giving in to this vortex, he ends up being saved. And then, of course, up ironically pops this coffin turned life boy. Um, but I think what that helps to snap him out of this depression. Not only did this growing obsession with the whale do that, but he faced death and he survived. Like he rose again. Like he was like this um, Lazarus rising again or something. And I think I mean, I'm just surmising this, or that almost gratitude, or that coming to life, that like cardiac resuscitation or something of his soul by defying death. Maybe that was his impetus or something for his resurrection, his renewal.
Fantastic. Thank you, Bronwyn.
Karen.
Karen, thank you. Yes, and Bronwyn's up next. Bronwyn, you have your hand up, so I'm going to ask you to unmute next.
Okay, and apologies again, my video camera does not work. So I found this little theory. I'm sure some other of you have read it, that Ishmael was actually Ahab. I absolutely do not agree with this whatsoever, but I mean, it's sort of interesting. It got me thinking whether he is actually another named character in the book, because of this whole call me Ishmael, what is his real name? Who is he really? So like I said, I don't agree with that theory at all. But, I was like, is he Starbuck? Is he someone else? Is there a reason, like he's had this like transformation during the voyage, and yes, what is he masking? Or is this like way overblown way to read the first line? And also that some of the first editions didn't have the epilogue at all. And people were confused because they're like, well, who is telling the story then? If no one survived. So yeah, it's like I can't help but wonder, like, yes, I'm making too much of it, but like, who is Ishmael? So yeah, I just thought those were interesting tidbits to read. So I would love to just, I don't know, I think I'm gonna have to read the book several more times to kind of see if I can piece it out, but I'd just love to kind of read some more like well thought out theories that really kind of piece together who he might be. But yeah, that one blew my mind at first. I was like, wow, I totally misread this book then if he's Ahab, but I don't believe that.
Thanks, Bronwyn. I just thought, since there aren't any other hands raised, I thought I would just take a brief look at the the polls that we sent out, and it looks like, speaking of Ishmael, he is the second most favorite character after Queequeg. He and Queequeg are responsible for about 57% of the favorite characters. There's Starbuck at 20% is third. I have to say my favorite character is Stub. He's my favorite. Wasn't as popular as some of the other ones. But everyone who answered this question, 24 out of 24, would encourage others to read Moby-Dick, which is fantastic, and 76% of you would read it again, which is great. And I think I've said this in other places before that you know, I think if you read it again in 5 years, different things will come to mind, different things will grab your attention. It'll mean different things to you in different ways. And it's one that I've enjoyed coming back to myself. And I'm also glad to see that all of you that answered the final question here, would you join us for another Penn Reads program in the future, would do so. So I'm delighted to see that, of course.
Jean, yeah, please.
Yeah, I have a question of, we read the Norton edition, and then there are a lot of reviews and things to said in practically about a third of the book. So would anybody recommend, did anybody read them? I mean, Dan, would you recommend reading any of these? Or I was thinking about, we'll read something and then go back and see if I can find what they're talking about in the book, but I wouldn't know where to start. I mean,
Susan, why don't you go ahead, since I'm pulling up my last third of the book here.
Well, this is sort of a different topic. I want to,
Oh, okay.
there was this wonderful volunteer session at the museum where people drew pictures to illustrate Moby-Dick. I just wondered if the museum had decided what they were going to do with those, because when I was there, people were making this beautiful art, you know, related to Moby-Dick. I would love to be able to see all of the pictures that were made.
The ultimate destination would probably be a digital collection on our website. We have, as we have done for other past library gallery exhibitions, we've created a digital collection of the exhibition script, you know, all the labels and panels, images of the installation, the gallery shots, photography of the objects, and that's something I would also like to do for the Draw Me Ishmael exhibition. We haven't put that together yet because the show isn't closed, but that is ultimately what I would love to have those up there, because some of them, as you say, like I've seen them, and some of them are really, really amazing and deserve to be seen.
Yeah.
So
Great.
hopefully we'll be able to do that at some point. Yeah.
Super.
And to very quickly answer the question about all the stuff in the back. I do really like the anything by Herschel Parker, I think, is worth a read. He's kind of the standard biographer. He put together an enormous biography of Melville, and you know, that first essay there, I think, is a really good one. There's one about his financial situation that I'm not pulling up right away that I think is pretty interesting. And the one about kind of the pictorial history of whaling, I think, is really useful as far as, you know, getting to know the parts of the whale ship and how whaling actually works, you know, along with these kind of really nice illustrations of the ship. So those are the ones that immediately come to mind from that section.
Thanks, Dan. Deborah, do you want to unmute?
Sure. So I was also just going to respond to, I think it was Susan who wondered about how much to read of the appendices. And I was saying in my small breakout room, I haven't read a lot, but I found myself throughout this whole time dipping into various parts of those appendices and really, like Dan just said, the whole section with the illustrations of the ship and the different harpoons and the boats and the process of stripping the blubber from the whale were so interesting to me, really helped me kind of visualize what Ishmael was describing during those times. I also read the story of Moby-Dick is back here, and I read that, which I found really interesting. So yeah, I think I'm going to be going into the appendices as well, just to sort of fill out. But it's good to hear Herschel Parker, Dan, anything by him would be worth perusing. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
Fabulous. Thank you. Stephen, I'm going to send you a request to unmute.
There we go. So about the narrative voice of Ishmael, I said something in the breakout room about this. I hope I didn't go too long about it, but it's something. When I first read Moby-Dick, I was taking undergraduate level work, postgraduate, and I took an American literature course, and Moby-Dick was on the list. That was my first exposure. I had probably read Bartleby the Scrivener in high school and maybe again in undergraduate. But the professor said something. I said, how much of this voice is Melville and how much of it is the character Ishmael? And he said, well, it's all Ishmael. But I just had this doubtfulness. And later I read Typee and Omu, and Redburn and White Jacket, and I found the narrative voice, very, very similar to Ishmael's voice. And so I kind of have the conclusion that Ishmael and Melville are not very different at all. That Ishmael is Melville, as a projection into the story, and I don't feel that Melville worked very hard at developing a separate personality for Ishmael than his own. That's my opinion from reading Moby-Dick now, I think 4 times, and some of his other novels, that when he's writing in first person, it's arrestingly similar from novel to novel. Some of his novels are written in third person, and so you kind of lose that personality of the narrator. Those are my thoughts about that. Also, can I say a plug? I went over spring vacation this year. My wife graciously gave way to a long ambition of mine. So we went to Mystic Harbor and the New Bedford Whaling Museum, and finally to Salem to see the book exhibition. But we're just blown away by the museum in Salem, the larger collection of cultural objects. It was stunning, and I loved it. I loved all of the things and so the appendices, which I have also read, but not recently, I think they're worth reading if you have a scholarly bent and you really want to understand whaling. But if you go to these museums and you listen to the the experts in the museum, they have a lot to say that can reveal and that you can understand whaling from their perspective too, because they're very well endowed with knowledge. So yes, go
What a
see.
fabulous adventure you've been on, Stephen. That's so great.
Great year.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so glad you were able to make it to PEM and that you had a great time.
Yes, wonderful museum. I would go back to that if I'm ever in the vicinity of Salem again.
Fabulous. Well, I hope you're not a stranger and we can stay connected virtually through programs like this as well. Thank you. Elizabeth, I'm going to send you the request to unmute next.
Yeah, I just want to come back to what Dan was talking about, the essay by Herschel Parker, and that's in the Norton Critical editions. It's called Damned by Dollars, and it's really, I think, this wonderful exposition of the cost of genius that Melville produced this book at a relatively young age. It was a terrible failure. It didn't make any impression in the Anglophone world at first, even at all, until the 1920s. And so he was a horrible family person, didn't earn enough to support his family, inflicted problems on his marriage. And it was only his grandchildren and maybe great grandchildren that have come to terms with fame and some positive outcome from his having written the book. So I thought that was really a masterful essay and really well done.
Thank you for pulling the title of that. That's the one I was thinking about. Yeah, that's a really great one. And
Yeah,
I
it's
encourage
in
everybody to
both
read
of
that.
I have two of the Nortons, the second and the third. It's in
Mm,
I don't know if it's in the first one, but
okay,
any of them are easy to find and easy to find used.
great. Thank you.
Fantastic. All right, Dan, any final thoughts before we bring the slideshow back up and wrap us up?
Nope. Let's
All
wrap it
right.
up.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you all for your thoughtful engagement tonight and for being a part of this voyage through Moby Dick over the past year. It's been a joy joining you this evening. And again, David sends his sincere regrets that he was not able to be here tonight because I know he's enjoyed this experience so much as well. And one last reminder, I will want to ask everyone to please send their name and their mailing addresses to Lil. She's just pinged us all in the chat, requesting that because we have a small memento for you all for completing this experience. So many thanks for doing that so that we can get that to you in good time. And now I just want to pass it to Dan to have the floor to wrap us up.
Great. Thanks, Danielle. Yeah, please do, if you've been here for all 5 sessions, even if you haven't, congratulations, like we made it to the end. I'm really amazed. I mean, it's been a year of gathering and reading and thinking about this book, and I've had such a wonderful time. And as promised, we will send you a prize for those of you that attended all 5 sessions, and our designers at the museum have worked their magic. I'm not going to tell you exactly what it is, but they were inspired by a couple of things. One, this cover design by Phaedra Charles. This is a 2015 edition published by Barnes & Noble. It's actually in the gallery in the book cover section. Our designers are also inspired by the cover of Moby-Dick o la Balena, which is an Italian edition published in Turin, Italy in 1959. That's what you see on the left there. That was the Frassinelli Tipografico Editore, the publisher of that. And also the zine More Choice Morsels from Moby Dick by artist Billy O'Callahan, a page of which you see on the right. And so without giving it away, let's call it a paper doubloon. It'll feature an appropriate quote from the novel. It'll feature a sticker from these Billy O'Callahan sets that are soon going to be available in the PEM shop. And it will also include the priceless signatures of David and of me, which adds inestimable value to these paper doubloons. So please do send Lil your mailing address and the name that you would like listed on this doubloon, and we'll get that out to you. And we've been delighted to spend this time with you. So just a couple of upcoming events worth mentioning. We've got a film screening this weekend called 76 Days to Drift, a conversation with Dan Finnemore, our curator of maritime art and history, and the folks behind the film. And then on Tuesday, July 1st, we're going to have a presentation by our 2024 Frances Malamy Fellow in the Phillips Library about her work on one of our collections on the culture of Urutu Island in the South Pacific. And we also had some folks from Urutu visit the library along with her to have a look at our archival collections related to that island. So I think it'll be really, really interesting, and you might enjoy it. So I cannot thank you enough for your time and your energy and your brain power and your insights. It's been such a wonderful experience doing this with you, and and hearing your reactions to and interpretations of the novel. I'm honored that you chose to spend all of this time with us, and with this great novel. And I hope you had half as much fun as I did. And I hope we have a chance to see you at PEM again soon. Jean asked in the chat if we're going to read another book, and we are going to be, we are in the works of planning 2026 PEM reads like this. Salem State University is publishing a book called Salem Centuries on 400 years of Salem history. And I can't totally, all the details aren't worked out, but we're kind of going to be taking a century at a time, I think, over the course of 4 different sessions. That's what it looks like now, but keep an eye out on our website for more details of that. And I think that'll be a lot of fun too. So,
Yeah, thank you, Dan.
yeah,
And thank you everyone for being here. So from all of us at PEM, truly take care. We hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Bye now.
and I think Lil, oh yeah, you're going to keep this open for a few minutes more if anyone has addresses to send.
Yep, feel free to email me or you can just direct message me in the chat. I'll stay on for a few more minutes if anyone is still typing. All right, everyone, we've got 1 more minute. Otherwise, I'm going to drop my email in the chat again and you can just email me directly. Thanks so much.